Roger Alexander, the Minister of Homeland Security, said that they have they want to re-invite, key players who will soon return to be a part of this government's tough, technology-driven stance in the war against criminals here in Trinidad and Tobago. Now, that's an interesting statement, and I too support what he is saying, because I do think that crime is war. I think it's really a war against crime. It should be a war against crime. I mean, the former Prime Minister, K. Christopher Rowley, stated that crime is a public health concern. And I want to know what part of that is a public health concern. But we're going to talk to the former Commissioner of Police, my apologies, Gary Griffith. And he is on the line with me right now. Mr. Griffith, how are you?
Fine, thanks. You were right the first time. Also, former Minister of National Security.
Yes, former Minister of National Security, also Mr. Gary Griffith, on the line here with us tonight. Mr. Griffith, thank you so much again for joining. As you know, Mr. Griffith, or should I just call you Gary? Which one you prefer?
Gary is fine.
Let's go, Gary. So as you know, Gary, crime is a major concern in Trinidad and Tobago. Even when you were here as the Commissioner of Police, even former Minister of National Security as well, your whole background, your whole portfolio was to deal with crime and criminality in this republic. Today, we saw Newsday posted an article alluding to the fact that key players and a lot of persons looked at yourself as part of the government's initiative to fight crime in Trinidad and Tobago, persons that will be coming back. I want to ask you off the bat right now, Mr. Griffith, if you have plans to come back to assist the government on any crime fighting agendas in Trinidad.
Well, unfortunately, I cannot speak on behalf of the government. That is a decision to be made by the government, and I certainly wouldn't want this to make any comment that could embarrass the government or myself. So that strictly is the call of the government. What I can say is I ask the country to recall, just go back to about 2 years ago, where a certain lady called Kamala Prasad-Bissessar and myself, as political leaders, we realized that the then government was totally clueless in trying to deal with national security. They had undoubtedly, I would love to debate with anyone to confirm that Fitzgerald Hines was undoubtedly the most incompetent minister in the history of Trinidad and Tobago. So they were lost. Kamala Prasad-Bissessar, at the time political leader of the UNC, and myself, we were working together after local government and so forth. We realized the situation the country was in, and we decided to offer our support, our assistance and guidance to the government. And this was not because we weren't PNM. I will never be a PNM. but the fact is that we put country first. We were both patriots before politicians, and we realized that the government was clueless and people and lives were being lost. What he probably did at that time was show arrogance, show stupidity, show that politics was more important than doing what is right for the country. And he said, no, I don't care. He didn't care about trying to get the support of a prime minister when under her watch it was the highest reduction in serious crime in 31 years. Under her watch, you'd have seen things such as the 12 diamond vessels being acquired at $1.2 billion less than the 3 defective OPVs, the Rapid Response Unit, the Community Comfort Patrol, the National Security Special Operation Group, the National Alert State Policy, the National Training Academy, tripling the number of police recruits coming in. And all of that had made the country feel safer. So she offered it as a previous chair of the National Security Council. I offered as a previous security minister with measured success. He rejected it. It said a lot about him. It is now for this government to decide whether they would ever be that small-minded as how Kid Rowley was. I doubt it. Listening to the comments by the present Minister of Homeland Security, I don't think he can speak on behalf of the government, but his comment is what is required. This is not about people being PNM or UNC, ABC, XYZ. This is about good versus evil. This is about right versus wrong. And you need to, there's a line in the sand that's going to be drawn shortly, and people need to decide what side of the fence they're on. This is not about supporting the UNC. This is about supporting the state, supporting the government in the same way that Kamala was willing to help the government because they were clueless. This government certainly is not clueless. I will think that for the first 3 months, it is the first time I have ever heard a prime minister be so, let me use the word arrogant, to stand firm and said, I am not going to negotiate with criminals and give them state contracts. That is something I've been pleading for years. Remember, I fought against my own government with life sport, and she agreed with me. That is why it was shut down. And those are the type of things we need. We need to have a government that is firm, not what the last government did for 10 years. When Keith Rowley and I had our fallout, it wasn't about COVID and not arresting persons. It had to do with me telling him point blank, why is your government is giving gang members $500,000 state contracts to build a $50,000 box train, and they're using the profits to bring in more guns, illegal drugs, and to put hits on other gang members. So this is a step in the right direction. The same way it is that with Keith Rowley, where I said, look, I am willing to give free advice. I don't need a job. I'm not looking for a job. But if it is that I can be of any help to assist the present government, I drafted that Ministry of Defense, the Ministry of Homeland Security, the Ministry of Justice, and the National Operations Center, among other things. So I may have some degree of knowledge that can assist the present ministers. I already had ran my race. It is now for me to see if I can utilize any support that the government will need from me. I am a phone call away.
And I like that you mentioned that as well, because the National Command Center was definitely, I'll call it a baby of yourself, Gary Griffith, former minister and former commissioner of police also. But it's noteworthy to know, and I want to note it for the viewers watching as well, that under the Keith Rowley-led administration, crime was deemed a public health concern. And now it is deemed a war against criminal elements in society. I want to ask you, Gary, whether or not you support the terminology used right now on crime in Trinidad and Tobago, if you support the notion of calling it a war.
Yeah, no, definitely. That is what it is. We cannot trivialize the situation when we are starting to get... We're supposed to be fighting to see ourselves among the 10 richest countries in the world per capita, or the 10 safest countries in the world, or the top 10 football teams in the world. Having the record of being in the top 10 criminal-ridden countries in the world is nothing for us to boast about. And if it is that we are in the top 10, I will think that it means that there's a war that is going on. People believe that a war is just open, overt warfare. But at times there's the enemy within. Sometimes there's the enemy who will be involved in clandestine operations. And now what you're getting is that type of collateral damage where you're getting innocent citizens. This is no longer gang member versus gang member involved in some degree of criminal activity. But this involves situations now where law-abiding citizens, persons are just walking helplessly in the middle of a firefight, gang versus gang, police versus gang. And then you get any law-abiding citizens involved in things such as home invasion, human trafficking, kidnapping, and extortion. All of these things, by the way, I put an end to as Commissioner of Police. And because of the incompetence and mismanagement of Fitzgerald Hines and commissioners after me, all of the things that I put in place, from the NOC, the Operational Command Center, the Emergency Response Patrol, the Special Operation Response Team, the Gender-Based Violence Unit, the Cyber Crime Unit, the Social Media Monitoring Unit, the Commissioner's Command Center, GPS tracking, body cameras, tasers, pepper spray. These people shut down and dismantled over 100 different policies that I put one after the other to make the country safer.
And it's noteworthy also to know that even trust with the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service is a major initiative that's happened under the command, I'll say, of yourself, Gary Griffith, as former Commissioner of Police as well. And I'd like to say that trust is almost still there, but it's not there as it was before under your leadership. I think we all could see that in Trinidad and Tobago. But let's get to some of the crime initiatives then, because while the government, have not yet listed out all of the initiatives to fight crime in Trinidad and Tobago, they did speak heavily about a technology-driven stance in the war against criminals in society. I would like to believe that goes as far as using the NOC, the National Command Center, as well as using camera footage, making it, I know it's admissible in court, but even making the court systems a little bit better. But in your regard, let me ask you, Mr. Griffith, what different, or what would you do now if ever you were to be made Commissioner of Police, or what type of advice, any type that you could give me now, that you will give to the Minister of Homeland Security and even the Minister Surge as well as National Security?
Well, I drafted the concept for the Ministry of Homeland Security and the Ministry of Defense. There's a lot that can be done and a lot that will be done. people have criticized the Minister of Homeland Security, and I think it's unfair because they are criticizing him based on the fact that he was never a very senior person in the police service, and that I think is an advantage because let me tell you, they had some people there that were really dinosaurs. They refused to accept 21st century policing technology. So all the things that you're hearing Roger Alexander speaking about as the Minister of Homeland Security, the things you're hearing the present Commissioner of Police, who also was more to middle management, that could probably be an advantage to them because the higher up you got, it seemed that the more resistant these individuals had to want to embrace 21st century policing, intelligence-driven policing, predictive policing, that type of policing, they were reluctant for. And there's technology there. There were 12 consecutive kidnappings that took place under my watch as commissioner, and that's why I formed that special operation response team. We were able to use technology, pinpoint the persons, kick down doors. You used to see that, you watch these TV shows, CSI, Miami, and all of that. We were doing it. There were 12 kidnappings. We kicked down the door. We rescued the victim whilst being held by the kidnappers and held the kidnappers. It started from Natalie Polnick up. After doing it 12 times, those persons realized kidnapping is nothing that we can do anymore. They tried extortion. We started putting undercover officers at those places and arresting them. They started home invasion. That's how we formed the Rapid Response Unit, the Emergency Response Patrol, GPS tracking. As soon as you jump over the wall, we can't stop you. By the time you jump back over, we'll neutralize you or hold you. And so all of these things, I think, is what I would hope that the present administration and the police hierarchy would embrace. Those are the things that were being used. Public trust and confidence in the police service went from 14% when Stephen Williams left to 59% when I left. And now it is less than 8%. And it's no fault of the police officers. It has to do with leadership and embracing the technology. So what you would have heard Roger Alexander speak about is exactly what is required. Finally, that National Operations Center, it was a gold mine. It was what played a major part towards the transformation of our law enforcement agencies. We were able to monitor their performance, make them accountable, GPS tracking on police vehicles. All of these things we were able to pinpoint. And because of that, we were able to get a faster response, and it made people feel safer. We were able to lock down criminals. The deterrent was there. That is what is required. The NOC, unfortunately, foolishly, Minister Dillon and others in the PNM decided to transfer the NOC from the Office of the Prime Minister to the SSA. The NOC was never to be a MACO installation. It has all the cameras and everything that is to assist us, not just in national security. That can also be used to stop traffic congestion, to assist us in improving carnival, major events, floods, earthquakes, anything. And that is what the NOC was for. Since the PNM took over for the 10 years, we spent tens of millions of dollars for a system that just stayed there. So it is hope, as the present Prime Minister has rightly stated, it should be used for the right reasons, and definitely I think law enforcement would benefit greatly from it.
And then a projection, because while we're talking about crime, and everyone can have an input in crime, especially persons that are key players right now, as Minister Alexander alluded to as well, with key players being involved or soon returning to take part in this fight or war against crime. I think persons are more so looking for a timeline, because when the PNM left office in April of this year and UNC took up office, you know, as well as everyone else know, that part of the country voting for the United National Congress was because of crime and criminality. But I think persons came with the notion that crime was an immediate thing that could have been fixed like in maybe 3 days, because that's almost like what the country is asking for. A projection from yourself as a real timeline with all of the measures that you're talking about now, with utilizing the NOC, utilizing every single measure possible to take crime down. That can be done over how long? What timeline?
Well, okay, I'll give you an example. In my first 120 days as a Minister of National Security, I was able to develop a national security policy framework, National Operations Center. I strengthened collaboration with Venezuela through a bilateral agreement that put an end to the La Guardia Nacional entering our waters, a bilateral agreement with Colombia, a national security management system, a national security training academy, highway patrol, rapid response unit, community comfort patrol. But those things, all of those things that I would have established in my first 120 days, you would not have seen the results until probably a few months later. But the good thing is that the country started seeing things. They started realizing, hey, new unit, new policy, new technology. We started doing a draft cabinet note for training of customer service training and protocol training for all police officers and immigration officers. That's a big thing here. Many citizens are frustrated by the arrogance and the obnoxious behavior of police officers in roadblocks and so forth. I did it as a minister, I did it as commissioner. Understand, Mr. Man, that you are a police officer, you work for every citizen in this country. They are your boss. You can't come with, let me say, driver's permit. All of these things had a big part to play in transforming the image of the police service that moved it from 14 to 59% in public trust and confidence. So people need to start seeing things being established, but you're not going to see the transformation of the crime statistics overnight. It happened with me again as commissioner. My first year, it took me 18 months to establish over 100 policies. Crime went up, but even though crime went up, public trust and confidence went up, and then after the 18 months, you started seeing a drastic reduction in crime. So that is how it will work. So for people to believe government changes overnight, you're going to see a reduction in crime. Total madness. But in fact, you actually see a reduction in crime anyway. and there is a pattern that the country has to admit. I'm not here to be political. Let's do the maths quickly. 91 to 95, crime went up every year. Guess who was in government? 95 to 2001, crime went down every year. Guess who was in government? 2001 to 2010, crime went up every year. Guess who was in government? 2010 to 2015, it went down every year. 2015 to 2025, it went up every year, except the year when I was commissioner. So you would have seen the pattern, where it is that it is because of the PNM negotiating with criminal elements, where it is that Patrick Manning's concept of to put somebody in charge of national security, all it takes is common sense and a level head. So he used a nightclub owner in Howard Chinley. He used Martin Joseph, whose 2 speeds was dead slow and stop. And then it went with undoubtedly the most incompetent minister in Fitzgerald Hines. Thankfully, we have someone who has a hands-on approach in Roger Alexander, and we have a new commissioner. And we have a chairman of a National Security Council that showed her worth. Listen, I worked with her as the chairman of the National Security Council. She's not a crime expert. She doesn't need to be. She was a prime minister. What she did was she gave me leeway. She allowed me to play T20 type national security, not St. McCree's like, Shivran Chandapol, and bat holding and then do not make runs. She allowed me to go out and say, PM, I need to get new vessels to replace the OPV. We need to get drones. We need armored vehicles. We need to do customer service training. As soon as I was throwing it at her, she was saying, go with it, Gary, go. And that is the type of leadership that we need. So she doesn't need to be a security expert, but she needs to make sure that there are people here who can just be driving things forward until she gets frustrated. That she says, oh God, you again, what? No, I need to approve this. That is what is required. Dynamic activity and just pumping policies, programs, technology, letting the public be aware you're seeing a transformation of national security. That happens, the public will start to believe in you, and then you will start seeing the result in drastic reduction in crime.
And if you could give a rating to Mr. Griffith as to the performance right now of both Minister Alexander and Minister Sturge, what type of rating would you give?
Well, Minister Alexander will be much easier. I mean, you could easily give him a B+. Remember, he's a new kid on the block, so you don't expect him to be I was going to say a Gary Griffith overnight. He has never been into the politics, and it is difficult. It really is difficult, especially with the political climate where half of the country hates you regardless of what. You could be James Bond. It doesn't matter, and that is why he is still making himself very accessible. He is talking the talk, and I think just give him some time, and I think he will do what the country needs and what the country wants. As for Minister Sturge, he has not said much, so I do not know. It's difficult to grade him because you really don't know what he's up to because he's not saying much. He can very well be doing a lot behind the scenes. So you can't criticize someone because you're not hearing from what they're doing. I mean, it's just 4 months in office. The Ministry of Defense is a brand new ministry. One of the things I think that he needs is someone with heavy competence in understanding that ministry. I drafted that ministry for Kamala Prasad-Visesa just before the 2010 election. Unfortunately, ministers of national security, when they were appointed, didn't want to pursue this because they thought they would have probably lost half of their ministry. But it is a critical ministry because you can't, in this modern time, have a minister in charge of 20,000 law enforcement people, police, army, Coast Guard, immigration, fire, prisons, madness. The prisons alone should be a ministry by itself to transform the prison system, which is why I formed the Ministry of Justice for her. The Ministry of Defense must be for the defense force to deal with border protection. 95% of our illegal weapons come through the legal ports of entry. We need to form a border protection unit to work in that Ministry of Defense. That Ministry of Defense is supposed to be used to transform the defense force. We can't have a defense force just sitting back waiting for another coup, where 35 years later you're waiting on another coup to take place. There's a lot that those 5,000 men and women can do without waiting for another coup. They can complement the police service. There's a lot they can do in developing young persons, taken away from a life of crime. A lot that they can do and have not been doing, not because of their fault, but because of the incompetence of the previous administration refusing to utilize them. We had COVID, and everybody in the defense force stayed in camp waiting for what? We needed the support. The police had to lock down the country throughout that year of COVID without one soldier or sailor from the defense force supporting us. That made absolutely no sense. We had a situation, I remember, where there were 35 different roadblocks with burning of tires and so forth. Defense force never came out. So it is hoped that the defense force can be utilized in a much better manner. And here, therein lies the reason why I drafted that Ministry of Defense. If Minister Sturge gets that advice and guidance from those persons with years and decades of experience, we do have that. We have the UNC have thankfully been the main political party that have utilized military officers as ministers of national security, from Joe Theodore, John Sandy, Carl Alfonso, and Gary Griffith. In the case of the PNM, they used one. There's just been one, that was Eddie Dillon, and that didn't go too well. It was the highest crime rate in the country's history until Fitzgerald Hines came forward. So I think utilizing the expertise of people who are still around, such as Minister Brigadier Alfonso and Brigadier John Sandy, I think they can provide some degree of guidance and support to have that Ministry of Defense ensure maximum capacity to perform.
I like that you answer. I was about to ask you another question, but you already answered it. I was about to ask about the Ministry of Defense and Homeland Security and whether or not you support the split in ministries, but I did read the post that you posted about that, so that's good. That's good to know. Gary Griffith is so versed answering questions before it's asked.
Yeah, I have a bad habit with that.
But definitely, thank you so much for joining. There's a lot that we still need to talk about, especially when it comes to crime and criminality in Trinidad and Tobago, and steps to really bring down crime in Trinidad and Tobago. But I think before we let you go, we must talk about the burning topic, Venezuela, because I think people seem to think this is like the first time warships out in the Caribbean. I think it also happened under your watch as well. I could be stand to be corrected there. But do you think the people of Trinidad and Tobago have anything to fear with warships being in our waters or in the Caribbean?
Well, I think what we had to fear was what we have endured for the last few decades. I'm not here to pick sides. I would hope, and I'm listening to the Prime Minister, she's saying the right thing, and people are not listening. She's not picking sides. What we have to accept, and that's why when I was Security Minister, I got that bilateral agreement signed between Trinidad and Tobago and Venezuela. It was the first time that Colombia signed a bilateral agreement with Trinidad and Tobago. I was able to get the Defense Minister of Colombia to come to Trinidad and Tobago to sign it, to be first to put a curb on human trafficking and illegal weapons entering. Same thing with Venezuela. For decades before I was minister, we had the problem with LaGuardia National attacking our fishermen, seizing their vessels, seizing their fish, seizing their nets, and they were in Trinidad and Tobago waters. I met with them and said, listen, this is going to stop. I have Coast Guard, I'm getting Coast Guard vessels, and there's going to be confrontation, and there's going to be bloodshed. Stop it. And they agreed. That is where, before 2013, you were hearing it on a regular basis. You didn't hear about that for several years because of that bilateral agreement. But we've had problems with Venezuela involved with LaGuardia National attacking our fishermen. We have a situation where the previous government foolishly allowed 20,000 Venezuelans to remain here without doing any vetting. So dozens of them have been gang members who have infiltrated the criminal underworld that have been instrumental in more murders taking place. So we have all of these issues taking place. And then, to top it off, now you have having the officials from Venezuela mislead the world by stating that Trinidad and Tobago is a hub for terrorist activities and a launching pad to use against Venezuela to destabilize Venezuela. Those are very serious allegations.
Yeah.
And when a country makes allegations like that against your country, and many times it is an excuse to be used to infiltrate and target your country. So we need to look at where our bread is buttered. I spent 17 years in the military I was also a security minister, and for decades we have seen the United States involved in these things, in patrols and so forth with CARICOM. The U.S. has something known as SOUTHCOM, Southern Command. Their job is to patrol the territorial waters of their allies, to ensure, and it involves training, it involves operation, it involves logistics support. It started with, it was known as CINSEC, the Caribbean Islands Nation Security Conference. It then went to CANSEC. It is Operation Trade Winds. This has been going on for years. They have never come so far south, because the further south they go, it's going to cost them hundreds of millions more in maintenance of these vessels the more south they go. So, but we should be thankful, because on most occasions, they will usually border around Jamaica, Haiti, Dominican Republic, Bahamas. So now that they are here in our territorial waters, it is important that we should embrace it, welcome it, because you are hearing Venezuela making some very serious allegations. They are throwing shots across the bow of Trinidad and Tobago. And we can't just jump up to say, oh, we intend to support the U.S. openly, and next thing the U.S. rise out of here and we are left defenseless. I listened to a junior minister. He speaks about everything other than what his ministry is, which is housing. For 4 months, he's never spoken about his ministry. He jumped in and said, don't worry, if Venezuela attacks us, the U.S. will come down and support us. The U.S. will take about a week if they are not here before they get down here. And if that is the case, Venezuela, they have one fighter jet can do serious damage to all our military installations and cities within a few minutes. They may not even need to leave the mainland. So we need to get that type of support from our international allies, be it drones for surveillance, drone surface-to-air missile for intercept capability of missiles that can enter Trinidad and Tobago. We need naval support. We need air support. People might be saying why. It might put persons in a panic mode, but it is better that we prepare now than we prepare later, because if we prepare later, it may not just cost us in dollars and cents, but lives that could be lost. So if it is that we can utilize the technology, the support from our international allies to support and defend Trinidad and Tobago, I welcome it.
I appreciate you, saying Minister Griffith. I'm preaching it into existence tonight. Mr. Griffith, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I really do appreciate you taking the call and joining me on this very first episode of Week in Review. Definitely want to speak more. There's more to talk about, but no time to talk about it tonight.
Yeah, sure.
All right, thank you so much. That was
My pleasure.
Mr. Griffith, Gary Griffith on your line. Some persons call him Uncle Griffith, all right, when he was Commissioner of Police to the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. Trinidad and Tobago, stay tuned. We'll be back right after this.